Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Awkwardly Big Dice podcast number 5. We're up to 5. And I am your host, Dan, with my usual co host, Rob.
Hello there.
This is the 5th episode. I think we're doing pretty well.
Episodes.
Um, Hopefully, it'll be as good as the other ones. Who knows?
Better. Why not?
Before we get into it, I will quickly shout out all our socials and everywhere you can find it. So, obviously, if you're checking out the live stream, we're on twitch.tv/awkwardly big dice. You can also go to our YouTube where you can watch the VODs and also the shorts that we do that are cut from the VODs. And that is just youtube.com/at awkwardly big dice. And we're also on Twitter with awkwardly big die and on Instagram with awkwardly big dice. Please go like, follow, subscribe, all the different things. If you only only manage to watch half of this, please go check it out on YouTube. The more likes, follows, views, and we get on there, the better.
Absolutely. And questions. Give us
And
questions. Tell us what
questions,
you think.
comments, yes, comments are always good. We've had a few comments on our shorts, like to see a little more activity on the VOD, but we understand longer form content not quite the same. But we're getting there. So we'll start. Well, I thought we a few things we could talk about, but we're probably always gonna talk about our usuals with our spell of the week, as we do every week, and monsters of the week. Love to be able to talk about D&D news, but the really in the news you've got at the moment, I guess, is the new VTT that D&D Beyond are doing. I've heard mixed things. I've not really spent too much time looking into it, though I know that um, Luke, or my brother, who were able to use lots of D&D Beyond content thanks to him, has been trying it and he says it's okay.
Oh, fair.
He says it's okay, but he's not used it in a proper D&D campaign format, so I don't know. But it's in alpha, so there's always going to be teething problems. So I'm waiting to see how it plays out. Concerned that they're getting into this space when there are already so many options out there for virtual tabletops. We use Roll20, not necessarily the best one, but probably the one of the for players at least, probably one of the more straightforward ones.
Easy to access as a player for sure.
Hmm.
I've recently branched out into, I believe it's called Foundry VTT.
Hmm.
Um,
You always tell me that,
so
and I never write it down. Should I'm gonna write it down now.
yeah,
Right now.
Foundry VTT. I can definitely say it's decent because um, it imports your character sheet off D&D Beyond, so that's pretty cool. It definitely, I have mixed feelings about it, but it definitely promotes like its own internal dice really well because you can click like your spells, or you can click attack, or you can click your various things and it will just bring up in the chat bar the ability, and you can roll it straight away, and you can then roll your damage. And
Yeah.
it is really really good. And the other thing we found really well for it is you can build in like line of sight blockers, so that if you're exploring a cave, for example, you can't see round corners and what have you. Um, and that is there like for each player. So like if I approach and go round a wall, you'll see my token just disappear around that corner. It's very interesting, very very strange way to play. Sometimes, like if I was we were doing a bit where I was over at the other end of a settlement, and I just couldn't see what the rest of the party were doing at all on the map, and I was kind of getting FOMO. It was a bit weird.
Yeah. See, I
Uh,
think that's kind of a similar sort of stuff they're trying to bring in on D&D Beyond. I wouldn't be surprised they probably looked at their competitors to try and work out what they want. My hope is it's not something they're doing to push microtransactions,
yeah,
because that
we'll see.
could be something where they start making you pay for every little tiny thing or extra little details. But hopefully Like so far, it's not really the thing. They have their subscription and they have different levels to the subscription. Um, but I hope that's not something they're going to push. And yeah, I'm sure at some point I'll give it a go. I do use D&D Beyond a lot because it's just quick and easy to be able to look stuff up rather than having to go and get me books. Though I still very much like the books, I always have the books next to me when I'm DMing, and I know the books, especially like the Player's Handbook, inside and out. So I'm always going to be able to find what I'm looking for in there. Pretty familiar with I think Volos is probably weirdly the next one. Like you think it'd be the Monster Manual, but I'd probably say Volos more than because it's got all the other. It was one of the first ones to have all the different races that you playable
Yeah,
races.
yeah. Goliath, ASMR, Tabaxi are in there. Lizard folk are in there.
Mm-hmm.
Kenku, I think, is in there as
Kenku's in
well.
there, I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah.
Purple.
Yonti,
Oh yeah,
Furbolg,
you want yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, they did some evil races, didn't they, as well?
Goblins, hobgoblins, yeah, and Orc
Is that
was
what the
originally.
orcs were in there
Yeah,
as
yeah.
well? Yeah.
Before they did the new Orc, which is now from Mordekainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse.
Well,
Um,
everything in Warlords has moved into that.
It has, so it's
Kind of-
considered what the on D&D Beyond they call it legacy content.
Yeah.
Um, Other news, I mean, there's always little things. They've got their Planescape book, I think, is coming out very soon. Wizards of the Coast obviously Planescape book, which is the
Oh,
one that is the with all
oh,
the
the sigil
sigil
one,
stuff, the
the City of Doors,
City of Doors, which is something that I know you would particularly be interested in, being that
very
that's
much.
an area of the multiverse that you've been looking into and driving towards with our on and off every 4 week 2 shot thing we've been doing.
Given the amount of recent research I've done on various sources into Sigil, the City of Doors, and the various factions and the Lady of Pain and things like that, I will be interested to see if they've made many changes when it comes to the book. That'll be an interesting one.
Oh yeah, I'd be I'd just be interested anyway because you've hyped me up on it. I ended up reading all the lore on the wikis and stuff like that, so I would definitely be interested in that.
It's just a really cool concept for a city.
It is.
The city that floats out in the middle of the Outlands atop an infinitely high mountain, and the city is a rotating donut, essentially
Yeah,
hollowed out with a city inside it. So there's no physical way in. You have to go in through one of the many portals.
yeah. It's
Which who knows? You might be doing tomorrow night.
nice. It's an interesting book because it's supposed to be like even the gods can't touch it, kind of
Yeah,
deal, and I think that's very interesting, and that
whole
makes
place is antithesis to gods, which may or may not be quite central to the plot line that I'm running.
that's cool. That's cool. It makes sense based on what we've done so far. Um, with working for I guess for we didn't really know, but I guess indirectly we're working for old Platinum Dragon Boy Bahamut.
Yeah, yeah, indirectly, kind of.
Kind of. But anyway, I don't have anything else to talk about with regards to just general things that have arisen within the D&D news sphere. So we'll move on to our first topic segment of the podcast, which is Spell of the Week. We have two, one each, as we always do every single week. If people want to throw suggestions at us for our next one, please go to our YouTube or our Instagram and throw up on there. That's where we're most likely to find those suggestions. Or check out our previous episodes where we have talked about a number of different spells and monsters as well, which is our second segment. But do we want to roll dice this week? Since I've remembered my dice this week, we can roll
Sure.
to see who goes first. We'll do rollies.
Grab a
I've got
dice.
me black ones.
I will use the Strahd dice that I had. The
Nice,
one that
nice,
looks like
nice.
it's got blood in it.
These ones are the formerly cursed dice. I'm not superstitious, so I know it's not, but it's fun to say. All right.
Okay.
You're probably gonna beat me.
I don't know. I got
What?
6.
I got a 6.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's how Rollies goes. I guess we'll do it again. We should
6.
probably set up a way to film this, but
It's alright. First time trying it. Do it again.
yep.
That's not much better.
I think I beat you then because I got an 18.
An 18. I got it.
18 on the
I
dice.
got a 7. So one better than last time. You can decide who goes first then.
I'll go.
Okay.
I was smirking before when you asked the viewers to give us suggestions because, funnily enough, the spell of the week for me is the spell Suggestion. It is a spell I do enjoy using. Again, I do have the running theme of mostly bringing up spells that I enjoy playing on Warlocks, but this spell can be used by, I'd say, quite a lot of spellcasters. Sorcerer, Bard, Warlock, Wizard, and the Knowledge Domain Cleric. The more spellcaster, more like arcane magic orientated cleric. It's
Yeah.
what you would call a control spell, really. It's an enchantment type spell, which it kind of does what it says on the tin. It's a
Yeah.
concentration spell. It's a second level spell, and at much later levels, there is a variant called Mass Suggestion, which, to the surprise of no one, is an area of effect version of this single target spell. I think, other than that, it probably mimics it in every other way. Um, it's got verbal and material components, although it doesn't specify the materials. So, oh no, it does. Here we go. A snake's tongue and either a bit of honeycomb or a drop of sweet oil. But if you've got an arcane focus or a component pouch, that doesn't really come into play. Um, a single action to cast, range of 30 foot, and its duration is 8 hours. So you can concentrate on this spell for up to 8 hours. And it's a really interesting spell. It's a charm, so anything that's immune to charm will not be affected by this. Typically, that's things like really high end bosses, or things like ghosts, spooky monsters, that
Yeah,
sort of
and
thing.
your constructs.
Constructs as well, machines can't be charmed or programmed, I suppose.
You cannot
So,
manipulate their programming.
yeah, you'll have to get a netrunner to hack them. I've been playing a lot more Cyberpunk recently. But anyway, besides the point, so Suggestion, it is a wisdom saving throw spell. On a failed save, you have made a suggestion, funnily enough, to the target creature. And on a failed save, it pursues the course of action that you described to the best of its ability. The suggestion must be worded in such a manner to make the course of action sound reasonable. Asking a creature to stab itself, throw
Mm.
itself on a spear, immolate itself, or do some other obviously harmful effect will just end the spell. So you can't just say go and off yourself in any which way you choose. It's just not going to work. It counteracts the spell in its entirety, and really, it's just good for bullshitting your way into places or bullshitting your way out to places. That's how I like to describe it. I love it for that. So that creature, usually a guard or an NPC of some variety, will pursue the suggestion that you've given to the best of its ability. The suggested course of action can continue for the entire duration. If the suggested activity can be completed in a shorter time, the spell ends when the subject finishes what it was asked to do. So you do have to be a little careful with it. You can't just say, why don't you go and uh, open that door? If you want that person to go away for a long time, you have to be quite specific. Walk west for 8 hours will work. That's nice and specific. Um, or why don't you go and spend the night with your family? Again, a nice, peaceful, and easy suggestion, and then they're doing it for the full night because you've suggested it. Or you can use it for things like kind of almost like Jedi mind tricks, I suppose.
Hmm.
Like, I feel that you should let us pass here and not really remember doing so. Yes, you may have to concentrate on that spell for the next 8 hours, or at least until you're out of trouble's distance, I suppose, before you relinquish that spell. But yeah, it's a really fun spell. It's a nice low level, so you can get access to it from level 3 onwards if you're a main spellcaster. Um, and yeah, I don't know what your thoughts on it, Dan.
My thoughts? Well, I love it. In my experience, from what I've experienced, because in our Curse of Strahd campaign, we did have our bard throw it out there.
You did. Old Duncan Wolfsbane used it to. What were you doing? You were sneaking into a building in Valakia, I believe, weren't you?
We're trying
Uh,
to get into the manor, mansion, whatever you want to call it, the house of the burgomaster.
yeah, we won't say why. Spoilers, obviously, but needless to say, it was essentially the mayor of the town is the best way to describe
Yeah,
the
yeah,
burgomaster in the simplest form. And you guys wanted to sneak in there for various spoiler related reasons, and there were guards posted on the front door and the back door. There were windows that you could sneak through, but they were not the easiest to get through. So you had quite a good plan to get in there.
we did.
The monk used, I believe, Shadow Step to get through the glass, to then open a window and let you all in, if I remember rightly.
Yes, and I think by that time did as my wizard, have fly, so we could get up. Some of us could get
Yeah,
up there. I think it was
yes.
something like that. But yeah,
It was definitely a joint effort.
it was a joint effort, and I think sometimes the best plans, the ones where everybody has a part to play,
Yeah,
and we did. But yeah, great, it's a great spell. It's a good low level charm spell. It's only gonna you probably really once you start getting more powerful enchantments, I suppose it's probably gonna slip to one side a little bit. Also, if you probably find most everyone probably other than your clerics, your knowledge clerics and your wizards also are charisma characters, so they're probably gonna try talking first before they
yeah.
move to using the suggestion spell itself. But does it have that condition that charm person has? I don't think it does it?
No, it doesn't. So what I believe Dan is referring to is that a lot of the really low level, like cantrip called Friends, the spell called Charm Person, once they end, the person that you've charmed knows they have been charmed and may turn aggressive towards you. Is that what you were referring to?
It's one of the things I was going to get to, yes, but it wasn't that specific one. I
Oh,
was
go on then. What were you?
but I was actually thinking about if if you are in combat aggressive towards them. I think charm person, the creature has advantage
Hmm.
against a save. Whereas this, I don't see it. Uh,
Let's have a quick read.
so as long as yeah, as far as I can see, as long as that so you could be in a fight and you can suggest that someone drops their weapon,
Yeah,
things like that.
yeah. You could do that, or you could just ask one of the people that you're in the fight with, to just leave and go have a nice holiday.
Yeah, just walk away. Just keep walking until your feet are tired.
It
Um,
does always remind me. I know it's a terrible film, but it reminds me of a scene in the first Wolverine movie where I think his love interest just makes somebody walk until they can't walk anymore.
yes, at the end
Kind
of
of just
at the end of the movie, the
and he,
Striker, I think is what he's called.
yeah, he's the guy that's then in a wheelchair because of that in the X-Men movies, isn't he?
He's in a wheelchair. Yeah. I don't know if
My
it's
brain assumes it's because of that.
yeah because of that maybe. Yeah. Yeah,
Maybe.
he's the guy who's like primarily responsible for Wolverine's
Yeah,
adamantine skeleton.
that's
Um,
the dude.
but yes, that was what I was thinking of because it means that it's useful inside initiative, inside your combat
Yeah,
situations as well, opposed to being like charm person, which doesn't get used in those situations because
yeah.
of that condition. It's not condition in D&D terminology, but because of that little bit of text in the description. But yes,
I think
the other thing
um,
you stated about them not knowing they've been charmed afterwards is also very useful if you're trying to be subtle, sneaky, stealthy, other words for quiet.
Yeah. I think the first point that you mentioned about disadvantage in combat um, is, I suppose, a little bit overkill, or would be on this spell, because it does have the caveat that if you or any companion damage the target, the spell ends. So
Mm.
you would hope then that the other characters had noticed that you had done this, or that you might be known for doing this, because otherwise you could have jammed somebody and they could be halfway through walking away and someone could just fireball everybody and then they snap out of that charm. Obviously, if they don't survive the fireball, then that doesn't matter. But it's yeah.
But yeah, yes. Um, I had a
It's a good
thought then, and then
place
it
to
just
leave.
completely went. I was like, I had know what I want to say, and it was gone. You talked about. I think you covered everything really, because you got your 8 hours duration's great because it means they can keep them, occupied for the rest of the day. Concentration is not great because you might want to concentrate on other things, which I always, yeah, managing your concentration spells becomes a thing. I think when you're something like a bard or a sorcerer, warlock, maybe to some degree, but wizards, if you're a cleric, it's something you're going to be very concerned about.
Yeah,
Is you managing your concentration. Same as like druids, managing that concentration is a big thing. Choosing which spells you're going to be concentrating on. Um, or as I had yesterday in Baldur's Gate 3, concentrating until you get hit the very next turn. But
yeah,
that's
yeah.
always a possibility in Dungeons and Dragons.
It
But
is. It is. Maintaining concentration in Baldur's Gate though seems to be far more of a challenge
it does.
than out in the normal
I
game.
think there's always
Um,
of the always a thing that people forget in normal Dungeons and Dragons games is people will forget to roll those concentration checks. So I always would recommend you just, I don't know, if you're really forgetful, get some post-it notes. I always have
yeah,
post-it notes to hand when I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons. I find them useful. Or it's a bit like, yeah, I suppose you could do something similar to when a bard gives me inspiration. I always set a dice aside to
yeah,
remind me that I've got that.
yeah. I think I do that with the little dice trick. Um, yeah, concentration can be a bit of a kicker sometimes. I do play this spell on warlocks, as I mentioned, and concentration is also a bit of an issue for them because
I
quite
bet.
often they're concentrating on hex, or some of the other free spells that they get through invocations, like detect magic. Obviously, that can be a bit of a kicker because you're always casting hex or other spells at the highest level that you have slots for as a warlock. Which,
Mm,
once you hit ninth level, which we have on our campaign,
on a main
means that you're
campaign.
casting hex to last the entire day. And obviously, you have so few spell slots that you don't really want to break concentration on that.
No.
So you really have to kind of decide where it is you want your concentration to lie. Suggestion can be fantastic in getting you out of a situation or getting you into a situation. Um,
I
but
think in that example where you're switching from hex to, you could switch a suggestion. Hex is, I feels like that it's always that one that you bring up when you are in a fight. It has other uses. You could theoretically use it in another situation, but its primary thing is to give
yeah,
that little extra damage.
yeah,
But you also do give the, yeah. But you might want to switch to suggestion to give you that choice. It's always a better
yeah,
thing. And
sure,
yeah, but I think with you, I'm trying to think. There's, yeah, every class has concentration spells. It's just I always feel there are certain classes that definitely have to. Obviously, with warlocks, it's because of their limited number of spell slots. With others, it's just because so many spells have. I remember when I was playing my cleric in Curse of Strahd, and the number of concentration spells that you have. It's a consideration when you're preparing your spells that morning.
yeah, absolutely. Because they've got such great concentration
They
spells.
do.
you want to be aggressive with Spirit Guardians, or do you want to have something like, oh, what was that spell called that gives you resistance to necrotic damage that you cast? That
Oh, was it one of the beacons or other?
Beacon of Vitality or Beacon of Hope or something like
I
that?
think yeah, there's a couple of beacon spells basically.
Aura of Vitality? I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
maybe I don't know. There was something. Yes, I can't remember what it was. It was something of vitality. I think is the one you're talking about.
It saved you bacon against a certain enemy that was doing a heck of a lot of necrotic damage to you,
Hmm.
and also it gets gets you up with 1 HP if you're down at the start of your turn, I believe. Not the cleric, but other
Yeah,
players.
I think it was aura of vitality.
Yeah, that was a great concentration spell.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, there we go.
Suggestion. I suggest you take it.
I suggest we move on to your spell.
I agree with your suggestion. Yeah, so my spell of the week is Arcane Eye. Arcane Eye, and I'll be honest, one of the reasons I chose Arcane Eye was I wanted to choose something that I had experience using,
Mm,
which I did with my wizard, the first character of Curse of Strahd. And also, when I thought, well, I had a lot of divination spells being a divination wizard, so I filtered my search via divination spells, and Arcane Eye happens to be alphabetically the one that shows up first.
I love the way you pick spells.
So that was why I chose Arcane Eye. No, I actually genuinely really like Arcane Eye as a spell. It's like your leveled up clairvoyance.
Yes.
Like I think once I will describe it in a moment for those who don't know, but once I had unlocked, once I had access to Arcane Eye, clairvoyance wasn't prepared again.
Yeah, makes sense.
But yeah, so Arcane Eye is a 4th level divination spell. It costs an action to cast. It does have all the components, so your verbal, your somatic, and your materials. Though your materials, you can use your arcane focus, your spell casting focus. But simply it is, you create an invisible magical eye within range that hovers in the air for duration. You mentally receive visual information from the eye, which has normal vision and dark vision out to 30 feet. The eye can look in every direction. As an action, you can move the eye up to 30 feet in any direction, and there is no limit to how far it can move, but it can't leave the current plane of existence, and it is blocked. A solid barrier blocks the eye's movement, basically, so it can't go through walls. That's
It's
pretty much
only an inch in
describes it.
diameter, right?
Yes, it can go through an opening an inch in diameter. So it's an eye. It's small.
Yeah.
But the great thing about it is it's basically just your own little invisible spy, little scout. It kind of if you yeah, maybe you're in a party where you don't have a particularly stealth focused rogue, and it's a great for that, or a ranger, a competent ranger perhaps, where you can send it forward, and it will scout the area out for you because you'll be able to see what it sees. We used it a few times. I don't think I got massive use out of it, but we got some use out of it. It put it into places where we like. Do we want to go there? No, we don't want to go there. Do we want to go there? We don't really want to go there. Um, we got some use out of it. We just got. I think it's the Arcane Eye that discovered when a body had been possessed and made an escape from us. Talking about the Revenant last week.
Oh yes, it did. I'd forgotten about that bit. I
So,
remembered when you used it to investigate up like a, was it just a tower or was it a
mhm.
clock tower or something? I
Yeah,
think it
yeah,
was just a normal tower,
yeah.
and the inside of that tower had kind of stretched out into another dimension. So it was taller and larger on the inside than it was on the outside, and you'd not realised that yet because you'd not adventured far enough into the dungeon. But as
No.
you got there, you saw how things were getting a bit weird, and then you came up against an invisible barrier because
Yes.
that was where the dimension change had happened, or the plane change, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Um, so it gave you a. It actually kind of gave you that knowledge in a roundabout way because obviously you know how your own spell works, you know the limitations of it. So you're like, okay, well, it's been blocked by fresh air at the minute, so that means it must be blocked by either some sort of barrier or it's changing planes.
Yes. It was. Yeah, it's great for. I said it's a great scout, and it probably
Yeah,
knows
it
a
is.
little bit. Weirdly, it knows a little bit more than your average rogue, because it's
Because it's
got it's
piloted by an intelligent spacecaster.
yeah, perhaps. But also, yes, it can detect that transition to another plane if it needs to, so portals or whatever you want to fit into your D&D world. But yeah,
I think
go on.
I was just going to say a really interesting combo with it that I kind of accidentally found out actually a good few years ago. Probably the first time I ever cast it, I was playing an Eldritch Knight, and for some reason I'd taken Keen Mind. I cannot think what the motivation for that was. Um, yeah, he had Keen Mind. This is one of
Smart.
my first characters that I ever played. Yeah, I think I just like the sound of it,
Hmm.
and I happened to find a scroll of Arcane Eye because he was not high enough level to cast a level 4 spell because that's like really high level as an Eldritch Knight because they don't get high level spells. And
No, half-caster.
I was just like, oh, I've got Keen Mind. And we were at the entrance to an entire like underground basement dungeon that was carved out of some caves. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to go map out the entire dungeon. And the DM was like, I should have put doors in here, shouldn't I? Yes, you should. It
Yes.
was all a homebrew adventure.
Yeah.
He could have said at the time, "You come up against doors," but he didn't.
He
Bless him.
didn't. Yeah, he didn't think about it, and he just spurted that out. So then he can't change it because he said it.
Yeah. To be fair, at the time, I was a newish player. He
Hmm.
was a newish DM,
Okay.
so we're forgiving it completely. He
Yeah.
was he was as experienced at DMing as I was experienced at playing. So
Okay.
um, we'll have that. But it was just I'll always remember it then because it's just interesting that you've mapped out this entire area and you've got a feat that lets you remember that like with perfect detail. And I quite liked that synergy.
Yeah. And it also teaches us a very important lesson for DMs. It's not real until you say it.
Yeah,
If you prepare stuff and then you realize there's a problem or a fault, just don't mention it, and it doesn't
yeah,
become reality. Or you can, fix it on the fly. Something I'm
it's
learning a lot in our current campaign is to be is be flexible, and lean on your improv
improvisation.
skills. Yeah, improv.
Yeah.
Yes, for some reason that word just doesn't work for me today. But yes, to be flexible. But yes, the Arcane Eye, recommend it for your wizards, your artificers, your knowledge domain clerics, and your arcane domain clerics. Arcana, sorry, domain clerics, because they're the ones who get it. Because it's really good. It's really cool. Like, I bet you probably find your wizards are going to be the ones who probably going to whip it out more likely. It's just the wrong phrasing for something called Arcane Eye. Um,
Yes,
uh,
it is.
and with your artificers, perhaps might choose. I don't know if they're probably going to choose other things at that level. But I think it's
Yeah.
really a wizardy. Maybe your Arcana domain might. Um, but I definitely recommend it to wizards. Makes you feel very useful.
Oh yeah, for sure. On to the monster of the week.
Onto monster. Yes, onto monster of the week. That is the direction that we are heading. Are we going to roll
Uh,
for monster of the week as well?
I think the first roll was good enough because then we can leapfrog each other and continue that way. So I will go first with my monster of the week. And last week I chose the Revenant, and I said that one of my favourite parts about the Revenant is every time the players kill it, give it a day, and it comes back in another body because the spirit is what really is the Revenant, and it jumps into the nearest corpse a day later and is back with a vengeance, literally, because that's the whole point of a revenant. So this week I have picked something on a similar theme. I said I was going to. One of my all-time favorite creatures that I ever ran in a campaign was the Boneclaw.
This is a pair that's been
Uh,
on your screen for a little while now because I have only just added it to OBS. So,
bless. The Boneclaw is a creature steeped in lore. If you're looking at the screen, you can probably guess with the name and the image that it is an undead creature with massive, sharp claws. Uh, One of the things I like about this is they're formed from a wizard who has tried to become a lich. Uh, Maybe I'll pick a lich next week so we know what liches are. But liches are kind of the end goal when you're a necromancer, immortal
if
undead
you're sort of more
spellcasters.
of an evil necromancer,
Yeah,
we shouldn't always assume necromancers are evil. It's a bit of a stereotype.
I suppose the
But
old meat mechanics can be good too. But needless to say, the Boneclaw is a wizard who has tried to become a lich but failed and become a Boneclaw instead. They've reached some sort of undead threshold, but they've not managed to maintain quite everything that made them who they are, and they've lost their ability to cast spells. Instead, they have some abilities which we'll run through shortly, but these hideous, cackling monsters share a few of the Lich's attributes, but while Liches are immortal masters of the arcane,
mm,
Boneclaws are thralls to evil, hatred, and pain. So,
so
as you can imagine,
spooky.
yeah, they're great. This thing can really rip your players to shreds with its piercing claw attacks. It has got an entire 15 foot of reach.
Jeez.
It makes two piercing claw attacks, and they're very accurate. They are +8 to hit. Um, for a challenge level 12 monster, it does a fair amount of damage. It'll do 3d10 +4 piercing damage plus 2d10 more necromancy damage. The average numbers for that are 20 piercing damage and 11 necrotic. So if you're just using flat figures, it'll do 31 damage.
Yep.
If the target is a creature, the Boneclaw can pull the target up to 10 feet towards itself, and the target is grappled. The escape DC is quite low at 14. The Boneclaw has two claws, and while the claw grapples a target, the claw can attack only that target, which makes sense. It's like you are skewered on those
Hmm.
massive.
I mean, 40 is not terrible. I would point out. For a creature that
Well,
is, I don't know, it's got a +4 strength, so it's kind of expected.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. Well, I mean, it's not too bad of a save. It's probably the weaker part of it.
mhm,
Um, it's done a lot of damage to you, and it's grappled you and pulled you in to its embrace for free as part of that attack.
yeah.
So, you know, I think that's pretty strong as it is. It also has an ability called Shadow Jump, which recharges on a 5 or a 6. If the Boneclaw is in dim light or darkness, and obviously it's going to be because the DM has set up the combat. So
It's smart
unless the
GM has
players
set it up so there is darkness.
have, yes, at least dim light. Uh, so I suppose the players could cast spells to create areas of light, so that is something to be aware of. But if the Boneclaw is in dim light or darkness, each creature of the Boneclaw's choice within 15 feet of it must succeed on a DC 14 Constitution saving throw or take 5d12 plus 2 necrotic damage, or 34 if we're going flat numbers. The Boneclaw then teleports up to 60 feet to an unoccupied space it can see. It can bring one creature it's grappled, teleporting that creature to an unoccupied space it can see within 5 feet of its destination. Destination spaces of this teleport must be in dim light or darkness. So it's kind of like Shadow Step for the
Mhm.
monks, for the Shadow monks, but it's doing some necrotic damage as it explodes into like necrotic mist, and it's taking whoever it's grappled with it. Now I didn't set the buildings tall enough to be to kill players, but I grappled a player,
Mhm.
teleported on top of a building, and just dropped them.
Yeah. Nice.
They felt like 2 stories. They took about an extra sort of maybe 20 damage or so. It did down them, but
Okay.
it wasn't like a killing maneuver. It was there to raise tension. It made the cleric have to do some work. I think what I really love about these things is even though uh, they're fairly low on the challenge rating, they have a bonus action
They're
which they
middling.
can just yeah, they kind of I won't say fairly low, yeah, they're middling. They're challenge rating 12. You're not going to be fighting them if you're level 1, 3, that sort of level.
Mhm.
Um, they've got deadly reach, so in response to a creature entering a space within 15 feet of it, the Boneclaw makes a piercing claw attack against that creature. So someone could walk within 15 feet of this thing and just get grappled, pulled towards it, and hurt and impaled. So
I
it's pretty
noticed it.
spicy.
I was
It's
how I noticed it, and I was like, "Say what? What's going?"
yeah,
It can do what? Wait, so it's got. Wait, okay. So because you don't see a lot of reactions. Like
you
sometimes you have
don't.
to go. If you want to say you're creating a homebrew monster and you want to give it a reaction, I like to look at what already exists in other monsters. Look at their reactions, and there aren't many. And I've had to look a few times, and a reaction is always great. It's not just your opportunity attack. And one that's got the 15-foot range. It means it's kind of a bit like the Polearm Master, right? So
Oh yeah,
it's similar that if it comes into your range, if you go into its range, it's able to attack you. Only this guy can also grapple you with its reaction. That's great, isn't it? Really, with its
yeah.
reaction, and it's got a bonus
I
action
believe
as well.
that's
But like, mm,
actually what I did as well. I grappled who came close,
mhm,
pulled them on top of a building, dropped them off.
sweet.
So that was like, yeah, they're a nasty creature. Um, if you kill them, as I mentioned, uh, they a destroyed Boneclaw gains a new body. This time, instead of the spirit jumping to the nearest corpse, its body just regenerates in 1d10 hours with all of its hit points, and the new body appears within 1 mile of the Boneclaw's master. Now, that's one important part that I have not yet gone into detail on. So, I mentioned a Boneclaw is a wizard that's tried to achieve lichdom and not managed it. Well, that's usually because something has interfered,
Mhm,
and that would become the Boneclaw's new master. So, perhaps another lich or another powerful entity, i.e., the BBG, has interfered and use that opportunity to create an undead servant that will relentlessly chase your players down. Now, in my campaign, in my first campaign, I can freely talk about this because I'll likely never run it again, and it was all homebrew. So I'm happy to go into a lot of detail. The Boneclaw was the twin brother of one of the players who had been murdered,
mhm,
or kind of murdered, by the BBEG and forced to go through this ritual to um, achieve in like immortality. Wasn't quite lichdom in my game, but it was this character was essentially manipulated into becoming this Boneclaw, which made the players having to fight it all the more emotionally charged. And I
mhm.
had the Boneclaws like features crack as they were fighting it, and like parts of it fell away, and you could see the slightly dead looking face of the character's twin brother underneath, and that was kind of how they realized they were fighting their twin brother, who was a tabaxi. So it was quite an interesting thing, cracking open this skull and finding this matted cat fur underneath, and
A
this
tabaxi bone claw.
yeah, it was,
Interesting.
well, cats have claws, right?
They do. They do.
It works. I definitely made sure it was more undead rather than furry. So we definitely went in the right direction with this one. And then it was really good because I built an entire like subplot that had woven into the main plot of the campaign, where naturally, as you would expect, the players now wanted to somehow save the player character's brother, which they actually managed to do. It
Nice.
cost them a lot of sacrifice and a lot of hard work, um, and that then gave them a powerful ally in the final battle, who had the original stat block for that player character, but was just simply a reborn. So yeah, I really like this creature. It's got a lot of flavour.
And the art's pretty good, man. Like, it looks cool.
Yeah,
It's got
yeah.
big ass claws.
The art
Uh,
was the first thing that attracted me to it. 'Cause like many DMs do, I imagine I was leafing through, funnily enough, Volos, because
mm,
that's I think what the creature is from. Although it will now be in
it's in
Mordenkainen's
now. Yeah.
Monsters of the Multiverse, so there is a legacy version. I'll be honest, I don't have Volos up in the office. It's downstairs, so I can't tell you what's different with it. But I don't feel like too much has changed. Maybe the HP, maybe the AC.
Let me have a look. It has the bonus action now, which it didn't before.
Oh, did it right? I'm sure it had that reaction before.
It has the reaction
Weird.
still. The reaction hasn't,
Oh, the
I think.
bonus action sneak. Right. Okay, I get you. I think it might have just been able to hide as an action before.
Oh, its reaction was different too.
Was it? How did it work?
In response to a visible enemy moving into its reach, the Boneclaw makes one claw attack against that enemy. If the attack hits, the Boneclaw can make a second claw attack against the target.
Oh yeah, I do remember that now that you've said that.
So you
Yeah,
basically can make two attacks.
that's probably a bit too good.
I
That's
wonder why.
probably why when I dropped them off a building, they were at 0 hit points.
Yeah, and I wonder why they changed it.
Yeah. Needless to say, you could play either
Hmm.
in your game, or you could homebrew it to be a mix of both. You could add extra rules. You're the DM. You can do what you want. You can make it an undead tabaxi that's been forcibly turned into a bone claw, like I did.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's all about fun. That's all. That's what it is.
It is. It is. Oh,
But that's the bone claw.
yeah, it is the bone claw. I wanted to use the bone claw, believe it or not, because since I saw the image, I think I hadn't given it too much consideration. I don't like to use unless it's part of the theme of a campaign. I don't like to use a lot of the same type of monster too much.
Yeah,
So in the last full campaign we did, I used a lot of devils because that was the theme. It was all to do with lawful evil devil type creatures. Um, so yeah, just devils. Um, but I would throw in other things because I don't like to always use undead all the time or devils all the time. So I always kind of like put undead to a bit of a distance because it's one of those that I always lean on a little bit with random encounters. A lot of like half
yeah,
decent lower end undead. So your skeletons, your zombies, your ghouls and things like that are all like really good just for your random encounters.
yeah,
So I've always
yeah. I
stuck them
agree.
there, even if you guys have never come up against them. So undead has always been was always put a little bit behind the others because of that. And then you told me in I think a longer form version of the story you just told before, um,
Yeah,
about it, and it made me look it up. I looked it up, and I was like, "Ooh, I'm not even gonna look at the stats. I just like the art. I want to use this guy at some point."
yeah.
Still never got
They
around
look.
to it. Maybe I'll throw it into our current campaign because there's player opportunity with your player having that sort of undead connection to throw it
Yeah,
in there. It's even kind of like a really good vibes that I could homebrew some interesting stuff with regards to your patron, even though he technically already
yeah,
has a
yeah.
stat block that I
Absolutely.
made ages ago. But let's
Oh, does it?
oh yeah, I made
Mm,
a Grim Reaper essentially, but a Reaper stat block a long time ago. In the first time I ever touched this particular D&D world.
interesting.
I haven't looked at it in a long time, so I might look at it and go, hmm, maybe that needs changing. Uh,
Yeah, perhaps.
I didn't even look at it when I was planning the whole Hallow spell thing you've just dealt with this week. I didn't even look at it then. Probably should have, but it doesn't matter.
No.
It doesn't matter. Let's move on to my choice for Monster of the Week. Because my choice for Monster of the Week is one I have thrown at you before, because I do like to use things I've used before. And because we've done a lot of like, oh, I've never used these things, I really want to use it. Wouldn't it be fun to use it? And I'm trying to just vamp why I add the image to OBS, but it is these big fellas. It's a flesh golem I've chosen this week. So my buddy next to me here, this guy. As you can see on the screen, he is a flesh golem. He's an ugly fella that is kind of just a amalgamation of other fellas. It's kind of the basics. It's basically a flesh golem. To read the actual description, a flesh golem is a grisly assortment of body parts stitched and bolted together into a muscled brute imbued with formidable strength. Powerful enchantments protect it, deflecting spells, and all but the most potent weapons. And I used two of these, I think, to throw at you in our Nuri campaign.
You did.
Always great for an evil scientist to have flesh golems as minions. Um, but it kind of they kind of. I always read their stats and I always think, oh, these guys are really cool. You want to I like the berserk feature and I like all the immunities it's got. And for some reason, they always just still seem to not live quite as long as you want. Because you can keep adding hit points, but it gets a bit ridiculous after a while.
Yeah.
But it does it makes some good minions, to be honest. If you want sort of minions for higher power, sort of higher leveled parties.
I think they're great. Like for challenge level 5, yes, it's
Hmm.
got really low AC at 9, but it's got quite high hit points. I know you said they don't tend to live as long as you'd like sometimes.
Hmm.
Um, I remember Zengris got quite the shock when he found out that they were immune to lightning, because I'm pretty sure, being that there were two flesh golems and he was a sorcerer, that he twin cast. Um, what's that orb spell?
Chromatic Orb
Chromatic orb. Thank
is
you.
his favorite. Yeah.
And he liked casting it as a lightning chromatic orb, which he did. Clearly, he should have chosen fire, being that um, they don't have vulnerability to fire damage, but they do have the aversion to fire, which weakens them in a couple of ways, doesn't it?
Yeah, so version of fire, if it takes fire damage, it has disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks until the end of its next turn. Like just only one person has to use. It can use a cantrip. Like as long as you got something that can, you're pretty certain you can hit him with, and with an AC of 9, you're probably gonna hit him. Um, you can just keep that, and you can that's the one of the go-tos to definitely defeat it. But yes, the lightning absorption is what you're talking about with Zenkris and his chromatic orbs.
Yeah.
Is that whenever the golem is subjected to lightning damage, it takes no damage and instead regains a number of hit points equal to the lightning damage dealt. So don't lightning bolt it, because you might just replenish all its hit points.
Or put a wizard with them that lightning bolts the players, but always lines up the beam so
That's
that it
cool.
hits the golem.
There's a few like sort of lightning spells that you could use that just be like
like
just target the golems. They don't. There's like basically healing
Like
the
Call
golems.
Lightning would be great, because
Yeah.
it hits. I think it hits everything within 5 feet of the
Mm.
point, so you can hurt your players a bit and heal your golems a bit. Um, if you're going for that kind of Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster scenario, which you did a little bit, didn't you? Because
Mm.
I know the mad scientist, he wasn't present when we fought these,
No.
but he was further on at the end of that
And he was called Dr.
dungeon.
Frank N. Stein.
He was, bless him. Although his end fight was a little bit different.
Yes, it
Um,
was.
but you could have had some sort of, basically, a Tesla coil or something
Mm.
that could um, be activated every turn to shock these and heal them a little bit, and damage your players a little
Mm,
bit, or I would probably use the Call Lightning spell to represent that, or maybe Ball Lightning. Is that something else similar?
maybe.
I know it's an AOE spell that
Mm,
sorcerers can use. I remember seeing that,
yeah.
and I think it works in a similar way.
Yeah, well, I've said before, I do like something that there's a feature that your monsters can have to heal themselves. We talked
Yes.
about it before, and it's always good to have something that can organically heal them. That's not a spell. Um, and obviously, you always want something that can counter it. And I think the version of fire, whilst not stopping that healing, is kind of a good counter to it. Um, it's got a
Yeah, they're not
mute.
like scarecrows where they take double damage from fire, but they,
No,
they do get sort of a bit weakened by it.
yeah, it's got a immutable form. Basically, you can't polymorph it. Its form cannot be changed. So the golem is immune to any spell or effect that would alter its form.
Oh, okay.
I know that
It
can
makes some sort of
become.
sense.
Hmm?
I suppose that makes kind of sense because they're made up of many different forms.
Mm. I
They're
think. Oh,
jigsaw people.
yeah, I think all golems have it. I think all
Oh, do they?
golems have a mutable form, and it's great if you throw it. So imagine you're in a group where your wizard or whoever it is who has polymorph. Maybe a couple of players have polymorph, and every fight is just turning the monster into, I don't know, a turtle or a rabbit or a squirrel, perhaps. Um, it's really good to throw one of these at them because they can't do that with these guys or
Yeah.
any of the golems.
And almost as though we were talking about it earlier, it is a construct. Construct. It is
It
immune
is.
to charm.
It is. It's got lightning immunity, poison immunity, kind of the ones you'd expect, as well
Yeah.
as your bludgeoning, piercing, slashing from non-magical attacks that aren't adamantine. Obviously, usually you're expecting that aren't silver because that's quite common with your lycanthropes and things like that. But this
Yes.
is adamantine is the thing to cut it with if you don't have a magical weapon. Chances are you're probably going to have a magical weapon and not an adamantine weapon. I think adamantine seems generally rarer.
I
Or
think
adamantine.
that's more on theme for a campaign if you're doing maybe a low magic campaign, like a
Mm,
really, really low magic, but you might be able to get adamantine. Um, or there is like the common magic items from Xanathar's, and I know in there is I think like a moon touched weapon, which is
mm,
magic damage, but not as powerful as a +1 weapon, which is
mm.
obviously the uncommon next step. Um, like common magic items. So yeah, it's definitely interesting in a lot of ways. I really like the way it's pretty well rounded. You know,
It
it's
is.
got multi attack for a lowish level for a challenge level 5 creature. Multi attack's pretty good. Its slam could hit pretty hard. It's accurate as well with +7 to hit at that level. That's really accurate. And 2d8 +4.
Hmm. It's
Nice fun
it's kind
campaign.
of a tank in many ways. It's just kind of can take a lot. It can take a lot of hits, really. Yeah, we talked about it not having great armor class or not as many hit points. Hit points you can change, can modify quite easily. If you do that with any part of the character, of course. Um, but really, what it does is it stumbles towards you and it whacks you, and it can just take a lot of hits as you do because it's got some great resistances and immunities. Well, actually, it's got no resistances. It's got all immunities, damage immunities and
Yeah.
condition immunities.
I always
Um,
feel that it should be large.
yeah, it kind of looks. It's definitely up there because I was looking up. Was it earlier today or last night? I was looking up what defines like if there is a written rule on what how big something has to be before it gets to
Oh, right.
large.
Okay. So like to help you describe the height of a creature or something like
In
that.
part, and it was mostly because I'm playing Lud tomorrow, Lud the Squasher, my orc, and being a rune knight, he has grown, and I was
Yeah.
curious whether or not he had now grown into a size that was literally a large creature. I think he's about 3 inches off being a large creature, which is funny
Really?
because of his rune knight thing makes him large. It's just the fact he grows an extra 3 inches would be ridiculous. So I'm just like, no, he grows the extra on top of that. Would be how I describe it. But you could
He
make
hits
it,
the minimum threshold for large.
yeah.
That's all he does.
And not noticeably larger. But I think you can make it large if you want. I don't see why not. Like,
That is true.
wouldn't make much difference. If you want to, I'd even be tempted. Oh, you can make it large, make it a bit stronger as well. Sure.
Yeah, more
Just
hit
give it.
points. Maybe give it an extra dice for damage.
We should talk about one of its main things, which is Berserk.
Yes.
Which is a long-winded thing that I will go through now. So whenever the golem starts its turn with 40 hit points or fewer, roll a d6. On a 6, the golem goes berserk. On each of its turns while berserk, the golem attacks the nearest creature it can see. If no creature is near enough to move to an attack, the golem attacks an object with preference for an object smaller than itself. Once the golem goes berserk, it continues to do so until it is destroyed or regains all its hit points. The golem's creator, if within 60 feet of the berserk golem, can try to calm it by speaking firmly and persuasively. The golem must be able to hear its creator, who must take an action to make a DC 15 charisma persuasion check. If the check succeeds, the golem ceases being berserk. If it takes damage while still at 40 hit points or fewer, the golem might go berserk again. I never got to do this because I never rolled a 6, which was always really annoying. And I've used them twice now. I may have even used them another time. That I feel like I've used them another time, but I've definitely used them with that one time with 2 of them, and
Yeah.
never rolled a 6 to get the berserk. Never did. I think it's
I'd
fun.
probably just have them berserk.
Yeah, I should have, but that was a different time, a
Yeah,
different
yeah.
Dan, a less
I
experienced Dan, I
think
suppose.
well, that's true. Yeah, I think maybe. I mean, yeah, a 6 seems a bit steep to have that. Having a only a 1 in 6 chance of that happening on 40 HP. There's a good chance it's going to die
Mm.
in the next round of combat at 40. If your players have all at least got magical weapons, and
Because yeah,
it's
prime
almost
prime example was our last session where you got 39 hit points and something that only had 40 left with one attack. So yeah, you're right.
Fitz is a level 9
That
character,
is
but
true. You're
still,
probably not going
like
to throw
that's
this at a
one
level
one
9.
character.
Yeah.
Even a single. Well, having said that, he hits no harder than a level 5 warlock could, because it's still Eldritch Blast.
Yeah.
He's still got the same charisma that he would have had at
Yeah,
level 5.
Hex. Does Hex scale?
No,
No? So yeah, probably not harder.
he would. Oh no, Hex would be fine against this because it's necrotic damage is Hex.
Mm-hmm.
Hex doesn't scale; it's just always a D6. It's the Hex Blade curse that
Okay.
scales
This
with
guy's okay.
proficiency, um, which is worse and better. But yeah, so it's you've got a chance to take it out quite easily once it hits that point. So it almost makes that massive wall of text a little bit of a waste. I honestly, I would just either have it happen on a 4-up, so it's a 50-50 chance,
Mm.
or just make it happen.
I'd be tempted to take out the whole roll. You just
Yeah,
have when it reaches 40 hit points.
goes berserk.
Is berserk.
Because I think like as a much more experienced DM than either of us was back when you first used this in
Mm.
Nuri, um, what I would prioritize out of an encounter is making it memorable.
Yes. Yeah.
No one's going to remember the fact that the berserker didn't go berserk because it's only the DM that knows that really.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've got some experienced players that are sat there thinking this thing might go berserk, but they're still not going to remember that it didn't go berserk.
No, no.
You're going to remember that it went berserk.
Of course. I
It's
mean,
more fun. It's more interesting.
very. It's one of the reasons that our last session, where I think will be quite memorable, was because you went up against the Devourer single-handedly, kinda. 'Cause unfortunately, Joe, who plays our rogue, lasted a round. Not even
Yeah,
because he went up and used his full movement, couldn't disengage because he had nowhere to go.
bless him. Like he fluffed his attacks as well. Like he went up there. He had the dice just were cursed for him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he then got absolutely battered by it. Um, was he
Does
on full HP?
I don't know, but does cunning action allow you to dash as a bonus action?
It does, but he wouldn't have disengaged, so he
But you
could
could.
have taken a hit.
It's the risk, though. You probably wouldn't have gone down with the attack of opportunity, right? In hindsight,
Yeah,
we're talking in hindsight. Like
I think with a rogue though, we can talk about what the smartest thing to do is with hindsight. You are absolutely
hmm
right, but I think what is more likely always going to happen, especially if they've fluffed their first attack, is they're going to still try and get the sneak attack with the offhand dagger.
that's true.
Because most rogues, even if you're thinking to yourself, I'm a swashbuckler, I'm using a rapier, uh, they're going to probably have a knife on hand just to try and make sure they're getting that sneak attack in. If they miss with that first attack, because that's the kind of weakness of the rogue is they're only one attack.
hmm
So I won't say I disagree with him not running away.
No, it was an option. He didn't know what was going to
Yeah,
happen. He is an arc. You could say it was an arcane trickster, so he could have used a spell, kept a range. Again, all in hindsight. All in hindsight. You
absolutely. Yeah,
didn't. Nobody knew what they were going up against. But my point really was with it was the fact that that thing has the ability to devour things, and
yeah,
I was like, how do I make this devour something anyway? Like I wanted it to be there, and it was in a basement. And there
yeah,
was bodies in there because I was like, oh, it could just be eating a body when you. Because the idea was you go in the kitchen, one of you is probably going to, you're going to see nothing in there. Why don't you just stomp in there and it would come out because you're just walking around the kitchen,
yeah,
and it would come out of burst out of the cellar, and it'd be consuming something um as you entered or as you walked around. But I got the perfect opportunity because I've actually had a player bow out. So I was like, what do we do with this player? Well, I might just kill him off, get him eaten by a getting eaten by a fiend, basically, and turned into an undead entity, a white
yeah,
as it turned out. I definitely think I should cover Devour at one point because it was quite fun to use.
yeah. Maybe do it
Um,
next week. It was a good fight. It was a good monster to fight. It was interesting. I liked the. I think the only reason Fitz could solo it was the being able to use the terrain to his advantage as
yes,
well. Like,
yeah, yeah. Like I don't know how other DMs would have played it in the moment, but I knew that it was a rough situation
yeah,
with yourself as Fitz the only one standing, and you're a warlock, so you're not built to take it on close quarters. So I was a little concerned. I thought I best play this fairly, and then you retreated and you had the doorways. I was like, you know what, a large creature got to get through that door. How's it gonna get through? If it was huge, it's not getting through really.
no, not without taking half the building with it.
Yeah, but with a large creature, you could just be like, it can force its way through it. It probably break the
Yeah,
entire frame, take half the wall, but like you can I give it an athletics check basically. I give
yeah.
it a strength check to try and do so, and I thought that was the fairest way to do it.
I mean, I kind of the way I backed off, um, kind of made it obvious as well that Fitz was assuming that that might happen.
hmm
He was very much hoping to use that to his advantage, that it would take it extra time to get through the door, and that's why he fled into the other room because he was hoping that it would either also get stuck on that doorway
Mm,
or what I actually wanted. Although it failed in what it was trying to do, it went for the locked door. Um, just didn't manage to barge through. I was hoping it
mm.
would get through and I could then circle round. But that's
Yeah,
a different tale.
it is. That is. But yes, so that is the flesh golem covered. We've done the flesh golem. There we go. Um, a big
It is a great
drooling
monster.
mass of limbs sewn together in a loincloth in the art anyway. But
Yes.
we'll move on. Step away from our monsters of the week, and we'll move on to our general topic, which is.
Oh, you're asking me? I believe
I
it
told you,
is.
and nothing
It's
happened.
because you pointed at the camera.
I know.
It's I believe it is digital D and or virtual D&D versus in-person D&D.
Yes, so it's one we can give our opinions on. on both and the advantages, and we can talk about the advantages and disadvantages of both. Um, I guess I'll give my opinion on it to start with, since I think it was my topic. I seem to come up with a lot of the versus ones for some reason. Um, I have a great fondness for what we currently do, which is virtual, which is we play over Discord, because I have never played so much D&D in my life until we started doing it virtually. Thanks to and it's a horrible thing in some way because many people died. Thanks to COVID, um, is is
Yeah.
is is everyone suddenly just became very aware of things like Zoom
Yeah.
and video chatting. And I would have always done it before, but it was always getting the people together to do it. But suddenly everyone was like, "Oh, should we get together and do watch-alongs? Should we get together and play this game?" And at the time, the first thing we played is we played Call of Cthulhu, another TTRPG, which we can talk about in another podcast.
Yeah.
And that one was they have a lore master. It's called in Call of Cthulhu. The lore master was my sister-in-law's father, Stephen, who was one of our players in the Nuri campaign, and creates many a good story. And we miss him from the current campaign.
Talked about him a lot last week.
We did talk about him last week. Great guy. But we played that for a while and we got through it and it was fun. And I was like, oh, should we try and do D&D? Because I'd played D&D in person before that. And I was like, sure, should we try and do D&D? And most people said yes. I think we got all but one person to play. I think D&D. And it went well, but we played consistently for a long time. Um, yeah, then the game didn't happen. It fell apart a little bit, and then we started a new one, which is where we had Rob, and we've been playing consistently now for 2 years.
Pretty much.
It'll be 2 years in October. This was probably 2 years now-ish.
I think it's 2 years, just about. To be fair,
I think two
could
years.
even
2 years
be two
sounds
years
right.
this Friday.
Hmm?
It could even be 2 years tomorrow. Who
Is it
knows?
definitely 2 years or is it 3 years? I'm like, because we did 1 year of my campaign and we did 1 year of Strahd, basically.
I'm going to say it's just about 2 years, purely for the fact that Strahd took more like 10 months,
Hmm.
and we've just kind of about 2 or 3 months out of Strahd.
That's true. Yeah, probably 2 years.
Yeah.
But I've played every single week. I think there's only been a couple that we've missed, like maybe a couple or a few, like two or
Yeah.
three that we've missed in 2 years. And I've never played so much D&D now, and I've been more into the game than I've ever been because of it. So
It's very true.
remote has, yeah, it's been great. I love it for that reason. It makes getting together in a group so much easier. You don't get as many cancellations. We also have rules with our group. We make it very clear that we play every Friday, and you have to commit to playing every Friday. Obviously, we allow people to not be able to play for whatever reason. Hope you're doing well, Joe, if you're watching. Because we don't have one of our players tomorrow. Um,
Oh, he will
is
be
he
there.
going to be playing? Oh well, there
He
you
is
go.
going to be playing.
Hey, Joe.
There
I
is a
still
story to
hope you're.
that which I will tell you
I still hope you're
afterwards.
doing well.
He-
um,
he-
good. But so you still have people occasionally miss sessions. We've been lucky that our numbers have always been enough to not have to worry about losing one person for a session. Also, as long as they come back the following week. Or even if we lose somebody because of like work, like we did with my brother, where he was because he in the Royal Navy, so he's away a lot. So yeah, I love remote for that very reason. Saying that, it does have its downsides,
he does.
and
Limitations, I would say,
it's
rather than downsides.
limitations, but limitations you can't say are not downsides, right? So you can make the best of what you do. Like we've very much moved into the realm of virtual tabletops now with Roll20. We finally got all our players onto Roll20 last session, which was great. Um, uh, but it's not quite the same as playing it at a table or playing it together. Um, Largely because I think there's an element of um, how to describe it. If you are someone who struggles with attention, whether it's a little disorder or you're just someone who's easily distracted, it, playing remotely will mean that you will be distracted and you may not be focusing. So that when it comes to your turn, saying if you're in combat, you're immediately just gonna go, oh, well, what's going on? Where am I? What's happening?
Yeah,
Because there's so many things around you to get distracted by. And in in-game in-person game, you don't have that because it's a whole like social setting where everybody is actively taking part, and you can see if someone's going to be sitting there on their phone, you can see it. Um, Even though sometimes when you play in person, someone's on the phone simply because it's where all their spells are kept or whatever. But
yeah,
I think there is a
that makes
certain element of maybe above the table that can be talked about. As in, you say, I have got all my spells on my phone. I'm not on my phone. I'm just looking. Um, that is probably one of the biggest downsides for me with the remote is that it's easier to get distracted, and in a big way you can't see each other's character sheets to be able to help people out or point things out. You can't see other people's roles. You hope people don't cheat, and generally I trust everybody that we play with, so it's not a concern. But I know I could definitely see it for some people being like, "Oh, I don't trust that that's what they rolled." Um,
it's it's definitely it's a difficult topic, I think, because there are definitely benefits to both, and I would agree. Being able to play virtually or digitally or however you want to say it means that consistency and um, the ability to just keep playing is so much easier. Because all on top of like the ability to play in person is nice, but the logistics can be so challenging.
mhm,
Um, my Monday group, a lot of us used to live locally, less so now because even in COVID, people moved further distances
mhm.
away because people can suddenly quite often work remotely as well. So you don't need to necessarily be close to the office to do it. That's biting people in the arse a little bit now because people are having to return to the office some days a week, and that's a
It's a
different
whole
rant and a
big
different.
social
Yeah,
issue that's going on right now in
it
Western
is. Yeah, it's
civilization. So we don't need to touch
that's
that.
uh, that's one thing, but it meant that we almost made a permanent change from in person to virtual and kind of haven't looked back. And there are many things that I prefer about virtual, but one of the love-hate relationships I had with in person is that it always was a whole day event. It had to be
Hmm.
like it had to be on a Saturday or a
Agreed.
Sunday, which is a good or a bad thing. It meant that I got to enjoy D&D for pretty much the whole day. It also meant that I had to sacrifice a whole day, whereas we play on Fridays, which is very easy because we start at 7, we finish about midnight, and I do a full day of work. I then have some tea, relax a little bit, and then I switch on my laptop about 5-10 minutes beforehand, log on to Discord, and away we go. It's easy peasy. All my stuff's already here. I don't have to cart about 6 heavy books.
No.
I personally don't drive as well. I don't own a car, so I was lucky with my in-person group on Mondays, back when we were in person, that uh, the logistics of it were quite good. One of my players lived not not overly close to me on the other side of Leeds,
Hmm.
but it basically they had to drive past me to get to the location that we played at, which was
Yeah.
one of our other players' houses. So it meant that I always had a lift there and a lift home. I think the other good thing is, although we talked about um, how Luke owns most of the books on
Hmm.
D&D Beyond, and as a result, we all technically have access to them as well.
Hmm.
Um, in play in the Flesh D&D, if one person turns up with a book, that just means everybody's got that book
Hmm.
for that day, for that session. So
Hmm.
it's also there's that real benefit there. Like it meant that as a group, I might buy certain books. We probably all would buy the main ones like
Yeah, yeah.
Tasha's,
Source books.
Anathar's, but it also meant that like if one person bought one of the other ones that might not be as worth buying,
Mm-hmm.
like Strixhaven, for example,
Yeah.
that nobody else needed to buy it. Pardon me. So it was quite useful for that. Uh, Same as you've said, like you can see everybody's roles. There is a very visceral reaction at the table when somebody rolls a 1 or a
Oh yeah.
20. It's like you would just see it, and like you can't beat that moment where you look down at your rolling tray and you see that 20 and you go, I got a natural 20, and everybody's looking, I got a natural 20.
Yeah.
Oh my god! Especially if it's a real tense moment as
Oh
well.
yes.
Like that is absolutely unbeatable. But that
Mm-hmm.
said, even with all that taken into consideration, and I think because of that, habitually, my was a weekend group, now Monday group, is still way less consistent than our Friday group,
Mm-hmm.
even though we are also now digital.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think people have got into that habit of we do it most weekends,
Mm-hmm.
not every
No,
weekend.
we can.
And for that reason, and we've always just kind of played that way, so it's just become our adopted behaviour. Whereas on our Friday sessions, we're super consistent. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
plays.
Mm-hmm.
People don't really miss the sessions without good reason,
No.
and they do so rarely.
Yes.
Um, so it's super consistent. It's just easier. It means I get to play more D&D, like you
Mm-hmm.
said at the start of that conversation. You've never played more D&D than you have in such a consistent way,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's opened the floodgates for a lot of people in that way.
I would imagine so.
I mean, talking again about, I suppose, the logistics of geography. Um, I probably wouldn't have joined our group
Mm-hmm.
if we had to go to. I know we've been to Luke's to play
Mm-hmm.
once, but if we came to yours,
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to work
No,
because
no.
in our situation, I don't have somebody who has to drive past my house to get to yours. So like I'd be getting a train to Leeds, then a train to Manchester or wherever
Mm-hmm.
you live, and it gets expensive at that point as
Yeah.
well. So I'd be paying a massive amount of train fare every time we played D&D, which then becomes quite difficult to facilitate. And
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, if if I could cast a teleportation circle every Friday, I'd come to yours and I'd play D&D in
Yeah.
person. It'd be
Yeah.
better, but it's not. It's just not quite as easy to
No,
make that
we
happen.
currently play with a group. Whilst we have half the party. Depends on the collection, but with the people that we generally play with, whether they're consistent players or jump in and out, we're all over the country. Like
Yeah,
quite literally, my brother could be in Portsmouth. Like, I can't get really any further south than that than where his actual home is in the northeast. Like we're all over the country, and it gives you so many more opportunity to play. Because
it does.
you don't you like I don't know if I definitely didn't play as consistent. I played maybe every few months before in person, and to be fair, what you it really hit me when you said about lugging around the books, like carrying around all the books.
Yeah,
I used to take like at least two backpacks to a D&D session because I had all my books, then all my paperwork with all my stuff prepared, then all my dice,
yeah.
like
My
uh
friend Ross did. He had like we called it his murder bag because it looked like one of those big old-fashioned doctor's brown leather bags,
okay,
like flips
yeah,
open. He had all the books in it, all the dice, notebooks, pens, paper. He had two folding chairs in the boot of his car because we needed them because there was a lot of us.
yeah.
Um, just the sheer amount of stuff you've got to take. But like, it's also really good to just have people there because then someone can say, "Oh, where is that ability on in the book?" And you can
Mm,
just, "Oh yeah, it's there in the player's handbook," and you can physically point to it. You all learn together, make mistakes together, instead of not being able to see somebody's screen on D&D Beyond unless
mm,
they share their screen through
mm.
Discord, and even then it can be a little bit challenging.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think that you did hit on something which I didn't address as well, which is the distraction.
Mm.
Um, in the Monday group, one of the players that has drifted away, unfortunately, I guess I think the group dynamic, the time commitment of D&D just didn't really
Mm.
work for them in the Monday group.
That's
Um,
fair.
it was quite obvious sometimes that they were watching football
Yes.
on a third monitor, or I think their particular vice was League of Legends,
All
and I
right.
know they have a lot of tournaments.
Mm. Yeah.
If you're able to just watch that in the background, that's fair enough. If you can commit, but sometimes it was pretty obvious that they'd not been paying attention for the entire round of combat, and I think it's kind of rude. Is that you're there to be with people that you're part of a collaborative storytelling
Yeah.
effort, and it kind of becomes one of those situations where everybody becomes slowly aware,
Yeah.
um, but no one says anything, so
No.
it gets a little bit socially awkward, which means that I'm sat there cringing. Um, or again, like you've said, there's always. I think we're pretty blessed with our group, in that none of us really obviously cheat. I think some of us have horrendous luck, and I think some of us have quite good luck. I know I get a bit of a reputation for rolling quite highly.
Mm.
Uh, it's a reputation that has plagued me my entire life. I will tell you now, even back from my Warhammer days.
The dice
One of
gods bless you.
yeah, it is. I used to get called OP Rob. I'm not even joking. It was really frustrating
To be fair,
sometimes because it also, like with Warhammer, it kind of takes the wind out of your sails a little bit because you might be sat there thinking, I really earned that victory. I was
mm.
tactically minded.
Mm.
I've battled my way around my opponent's defenses, and then going, oh, you roll so bloody well. And I'm like, well, I guess so, but you know,
I always feel like with you though, it's more the case that uh, you know the mechanics of with
yeah,
Dungeons and Dragons. You know the mechanics, and you're very good at. You love to you do min max, and you'll build
I do.
characters like that, and you know the ins and outs. And you always know every little trick, so that it will look like you are rolling really well when you're like, oh, what did you? And it's like roll to hit, oh, 25, and you're like, how does he always? And you've got like a 10. It's like, well, that's just
Yeah,
that's just how it goes when you build your characters like that. Um, it can't all be like, well, I mean, my brother has ridiculous luck, I will say, because he rolls and he'll tell you the number, and you're like, again, really? Um, and I trust him,
and
so
then
I do believe that's the case. But we do like to make fun because everyone likes to make fun.
yeah,
Or when Steph rolls to make her characters and her stats are always somehow end up being really high. Like, how did she do that? Or
yeah.
on the other end, when you've got Joe rolling and getting no more than a 5 consistently, um, like he's me in freaking Baldur's Gate. Like that's like
I think was it on his arc or some one of his characters, he literally took the lucky feat because he needed it. Yeah.
yeah.
Rather than trying to commit
Mm.
bullshit rerolls and utilize the lucky feat in its current wording in ways that are a bit um, going against its maybe intention.
Mm.
No, he just took the lucky feat because he's like, I really need to re-roll some of these ones because please.
He has done something to offend the dice gods.
Yeah. So earlier when I said the rogue fluffed their dice against the devourer, that was Joe that was playing that. We
Mm.
were not surprised when he missed his
No,
attacks.
no,
It's not that he's made a character that's bad. It's just that I think
no. It's pretty
maybe
good.
I might have to ask him if he knows what a D20 is because he might be rolling D10s.
That'd be funny the entire time if you're rolling
That
D.
would be fun. I don't think that's true.
No, no, he's a smart guy. I don't think that's the case.
If you're
Um,
watching Joe, I don't think you're stupid.
I
But
think, but to summarize, we're coming to the end now. To summarize, both remote and in person have both benefits and disadvantages. Advantages, disadvantages to use D&D terminology. It really depends on what you want from your game. Atmosphere, there is no better atmosphere when you are playing in person with a good party. Sometimes with a bad party, it's not great. And if you've got people who are easily distracted, it's not always great online. Just like if you get people who I'll be honest, I don't like people drinking when I'm DMing an in-person game
Yeah.
because drink alcohol just makes people distracted, tired, and it just the game goes out the window and eventually just drifts into not playing the game. That'll be my last big point about it. But both have their advantages and disadvantages. If you really just care about playing Dungeons and Dragons, I really recommend remote.
Mhm.
And there's
Yeah.
stacks of communities out there if you're just looking for people to find players. If you want to do that, I am such an introvert that I would never approach such a thing, but I know they exist. Um,
Yeah.
but if you are looking to have more um, atmospheric, immersive sessions, and especially if you look, I think role play works even better in person. Like I
Yes.
much prefer, like I love role play. It's my favorite part of the game. And when I'm a dungeon master and I'm doing it in person, which I've always done, I've only ever DM'd in per. Oh, no, that's not right. Whenever I've played in person, I've always DM'd. I've never been a player and played
Oh
in
yeah,
person.
I get what you mean. Yeah.
So,
You've
uh,
never played in person.
yeah, I find the role plays better because you can get so much more physical with it. It
Yeah.
becomes far more physical, and you can look at everybody. You can direct your attention to somebody in particular, and they suddenly feel that spotlight on them. As I said, the atmosphere can't be beaten for in person. You want regularity, and you want consistency. I recommend remote, and remote's only getting better with things like the virtual tabletops that we're seeing out there with Foundry, Roll20, and now D&D Beyond's got their own in development.
We did also neglect to mention something that's great about in-person play.
That's
If you've got a
minis.
group that will do it, minis.
Minis, yeah.
I love that about in-person play, but again, we're talking about transporting even more stuff.
Mm.
Um,
It
and
is why if you are going to play in person, you kind of want it to be the DM, your dungeon master, or if you're not playing Dungeons and Dragons, your GM, who is the one who doesn't have to move. You're playing at their
yeah,
house because then everything is there and they don't have to move. But that isn't always convenient. So um, again,
local
convenience,
hobby shops can be good for that.
yes, yeah, convenience, remote atmosphere. I think can be beaten for in person. And with that, we will come to an end of our fifth episode of the Awkwardly Big Dice podcast. Thank you for joining us and watching. Please give us a follow on the Twitch if you haven't already. Go to our YouTube if you're not already on YouTube. If you're already on YouTube, subscribe, give us a like, check out all our shorts, give them a like. If you're on Instagram and you're watching, I mean, if you're watching a short, I don't usually make shorts for my clothing statement, but if you want to, you can check us out on Instagram. I put up reels on there that basically are shots from YouTube. Feel
Yeah,
free to check those out. Give them a like. Follow us on Instagram. Then, of course, go back to YouTube and follow us and like us on YouTube. I'm on Twitter. So we're on Twitter as well. Um, Follow us on there. Like our posts on there. Keep up to date with what's going on. And when we're going to be streaming and posting, I post the VOD, the VOD, on a Friday after it's been tweaked and messed with a little bit to make it better for that platform. But that being said, all in all, unless there's any other statements from my co-host, we shall call it a day for this episode of the Awkwardly Big Dice podcast.
thanks for coming. Hope you
Thank
had a good
you.
time.
Goodbye.